Well, is it though? It's a unicorn.
I mean, the only difference in the unicorn is the horn on the front. So
correct. Yeah.
I imagine everything else.
Can you fuck a horse smart?
You could try.
Me personally, I could try. It's not that I'm going to.
I think the horse would be really upset.
He'd be like, "No, your turn."
not because he's fucking it, mostly because he'd be disappointed. Because we all know a horse is gigantic, and we just can't own up to that, like at all. No. Not even a little bit.
I was reading this thing on Reddit.
No, stop. Just no, we're done. We're done. Mild bestiality on the show. That's all we need. We don't need to bring Reddit in. Getting caught in the rain. Clink clang.
Clink clank. Clink clink.
Hello and welcome to Strange Happy Hour. I am one of your hosts, Brent the Jesterhead Metcalf. Along to my right,
handsome John Pettit.
At that beautiful color, and on the left,
the dispatcher, Mark Plover.
That is actually really cool because you sounded like a dispatcher. Of course, we come to you each and every week to discuss with you the very nerdy video game news as well as the really cool tech news. However, before we continue, we do have some updates from the top. Looks like a judge has denied Apple's theft claim against Epic, stating that they will have to continue in court and that they do not get a clear win in this case. Also, Phil Spencer denies any reports of Xbox purchasing a Japanese studio. I'm sure, but
buy stock now
from the top that we have to deliver because we are newsies. But of course, we can't talk about everything that happens within a week because we are way too busy. Also, we can't discuss everything that's going on, including how Twitch is now allowing users to buy affiliation, in case you were wondering. We also can't talk about how Naruto's original author will be returning to take over writing duties for the Boruto manga. Very interesting, because I think the Boruto manga is pretty good. A lot of people hate it. We also cannot discuss how Sony execs expect a full transition from PS4 to PS5 to take 3 years.
Yeah.
There we go. That's the camera. 3 years. However, we do have time to discuss what we like to call on this very show each and every week as I scratch my ear because I'm itching all the time.
Itchy man.
The important Yeah, I lost track because I got so itchy. But Dispatcher, bring us back around to what's going on with Apple and One More Thing event. I hate the name of that, by the way. So dumb.
Yeah, it's only like they've had, I think, like 5, maybe 6 conferences this year now
also,
total.
This event wasn't one thing.
Yeah, well, it was centered around one thing. So Apple's One More Thing event took place on, what was that? That was last Tuesday, the 10th at this point. Yes. I'll be honest. Part of the reason that we didn't do like a separate episode on this is I didn't really think that this was groundbreaking enough off the rip. That
you heard
we really
here, folks.
needed.
Thank you for coming in for the episode. We can end it now. No,
I didn't think that we needed its own episode anyway to really talk about this. Just Apple Silicon is cool, and everyone knew, to be clarified, that this entire conference, this whole One More Thing event, was around the new Apple Silicon for Macs specifically. Apple's been on Silicon, we talked about this before, on iPhones and the Apple Watch and AirPods, for a while now. They have their own Silicon chips anyway in there now for processing. So they're finally doing it in the laptop space, and I would say the small-ish computing space, because 3 devices were launched or were announced back on the 10th, talking about or implementing the new Apple Silicon for desktops or for laptops together, using what they're calling the new M1 chip. Now, M1 is basically built on the idea of SoC, system on a chip, which means it has the majority of the components that you need to run a system on a single chip that you just need to have a board to interface with it. The whole point, anyway, is that everything is packed tightly into a nice little tiny package or silicon package anyway that can just be sort of transplanted pretty easily from system to system, short of any kind of like cutbacks or whatever, between systems, which I'll get to in a little bit. but the whole point is that your CPU, your GPU, your neural network cores, and your RAM are all on the same chip. Which also means that any of these devices that you get from here, you can't upgrade your RAM after the fact. Fun fact, this is the same for all of them. You also can't upgrade your storage after the fact.
Yep.
Which
this has been my number one problem with Apple as they continue to
Yeah.
move in this direction is that
Yep.
you're moving away from my ability to upgrade or expand.
They
on
want
the
you to go to
device in
cloud.
any
They
manner.
want you to pay for the cloud. The RAM
as it stands, the only Mac or new Mac that you can get that you can actually upgrade components on is the Mac Pro, which is the cheese grater. And that's just because it's basically the idea of a standard desktop, or the size and the spec of a standard desktop. But even then, like, you can't really do processor upgrades. All you can upgrade is the RAM and the graphics computing.
Yeah.
Why'd you call it a cheese grater?
Because that's what the front end looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me pull up an image of it, I guess, while we're talking. But
mostly because it's what I use in order to make my grilled cheese. Mac Pro.
Sure. Yeah. That.
Okay.
Right there, John. Take a look at that.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
That is a cheese grater.
Wow. Yeah, that's what they call it.
Wow.
The engineering for this was actually kind of a feat. Apparently, there's a whole video explaining it, but not from Apple, from third parties. But anywho,
yeah, I was about to say,
not from Apple. Apple doesn't talk about that stuff.
The cheese grater is a really unique object, and we decided to utilize that for the cooling perspective. Let us dive in.
We just realized that. It just makes so much sense. It's been in front of us the entire time.
No, but the Mac Pro currently is the only system that actually allows you to open it, take it apart, and replace components in it. Unless you buy something older, like an older Mac Mini, an older MacBook Pro, or some older iMacs too. Have like replaceable RAM at a minimum. Hard drives are something you kind of can, depending on what model you get. But anything new that uses NVMe solid state generally has solder chips. Yeah. So the new M1 chip, being SoC, uses a unified memory architecture. They're calling that UMA. It's similar to now, I actually, come to think of it, I need to drop that note. Where it does implement sort of a similar AMD process, like with a cache on board on the chip. The difference is that your RAM is physically located on the chip too, with a higher bandwidth access capacity. Now, this gives a lot of performance benefits because you can have higher throughput on your memory. And it's a singular pool of silicon memory that you can access at a short distance like that, as opposed to having to interface with another bus and go through the motherboard, which then makes it a little bit dependent on that. Plus, you can, from Apple's perspective, they can also control the speed and the clock speed of the memory to make it read and write a little bit faster.
Yeah.
This all, of course, is running on a 5 nanometer build process that Apple's developed themselves, which 5 nanometer is impressive. Yeah. The only other things that run 5 nanometer at this point, of course, are iPhones and some Snapdragon devices for Android, because they've gotten really good processes down for small SoCs like that anyway, whenever it comes to small core or small clock or low clock speed devices.
And IMDb's Watson. Just keep going.
There are so many confusing. Anyway, 16 billion transistors on it. Uses an 8-core CPU with similar to like the iPhone setup. It's 4 high, 4 low core processors. Although I believe the iPhones are 2 up or 2 high, 4 low. But they put out a couple of kind of weird claims out there without really giving a ton of background on them. They said, quote, it's the world's fastest. They quoted it as the world's fastest CPU core and the world's best performance per watt. But the graphs that they used were kind of generic, didn't really explain what the Y graph was necessarily, and didn't explain didn't actually show the ticks on the x-axis or the y-axis to really say what kind of quantifiable value you're really giving it there. But it showed some interesting arcs to show that, it had better performance at a much lower output or much lower power requirement. Which,
sounds like an
to be fair,
meeting that you don't want to tell them the truth.
To be fair, though, it apparently did actually add up to some good numbers, because now that we're this far after the event, a lot of people already have theirs, particularly reviewers. So I was watching Marquez Brownlee's video today on it, where the and I'll get into the devices in a little bit, but like the MacBook Pro and the MacBook Air both tout, I think it was 20 and 16 hours of video playback each, or respectively, rather. I'm sorry, respectively. And apparently it can kind of hit that. So Marquez was talking about going an entire week without having to charge his MacBook Pro.
Man.
And then that's with pretty moderate usage between web productivity, video watching, web browsing in general, like Twitter, whatever else he does, and talk about really good battery life on it. So
it's where I fell apart because I don't use a laptop for those things. That's what my phone's for.
Yeah.
If I use a laptop, it's typically because I'm coming on there to use it for a purpose, right? Like game development, video editing, like work.
Something that in particular something that requires a keyboard.
Well,
Correct,
for some people that is their job too. So if they are managing Twitters and stuff like that, or whatever you want to call them, using a computer would be a lot better for them.
Yeah. I mean, I'd imagine Marquez probably spends a good amount of time reading through comments and typing back and replying to comments, which I imagine on hundreds of comments or thousands of comments would probably get it kind of annoying on the phone. But
compiling backend running API? No, he's nothing.
No, but so like they're talking about the best performance per watt, and apparently some of those claims kind of hold up. I don't want to say necessarily it's the best or the world's best necessarily.
Well,
but they're on the path. Well, it's been released.
It's like what you asked.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. The reviewers have them, but the reason the reviewers have them because Apple doesn't generally give a ton of reviewer units. So Marquez and Linus both purchased theirs, and had them shipped and delivered.
Of course, they had to.
Yeah, I mean, like Linus showed a tweet or whatever of his order or whatever to say, "Oh, hey, your order's been shipped" or whatever. I'm sure they're getting their review together, and if it's not out literally right now, then by the time this releases, it'll probably be out. Anywho, so moving on to the next bit of this is the 8-core GPU, which again they quoted as the world's fastest integrated graphics. Now, that is a kind of an interesting one in the sense that they're talking about it being integrated graphics, which is kind of an easy one to get away with because from an integrated graphics perspective, the only two companies that you're competing with are not Snapdragon. Who owns them? Texas Instruments. And Intel. AMD doesn't do integrated graphics on their chips anymore. And Intel's integrated graphics are notoriously terrible. Hell, their dedicated graphics card, the Xi card or whatever the hell it was called, was notoriously was pretty bad. So
that name's terrible.
That's kind of an easy claim to make and get away with. Kind of an interesting bit you don't get on computers at this point, unless you're getting like an AMD or an either a new AMD card or an RTX card, is 16-core neural engine processors or processing unit, which is apparently a 11,000 tera operations per second, or I'm sorry, 11 trillion operations per second. My brain on or flops, but a trillion operations per second. Which is kind of cool. Like you've got cores built specifically to do AI and machine learning based algorithms or processing like that, which is kind of cool to have on that if you're using an application that can take advantage of that, like Photoshop, for example, or Lightroom. From an image processing perspective, they've got AI machine learning based tasks that you can run there. But I'll be honest, for the majority of things, I don't know what the hell you're going to use it for, unless the graphics processing utilizes it for some of the same things that like AMD, or I'm sorry, not AMD, NVIDIA uses on the RTX cards.
Also, when we're talking about machine learning and talking about people trying to utilize this for most people, most organizations, right, are using the lowest common denominator, which is like it's just makes sense. So while this is very fancy and very cool, I imagine the price is much higher, and therefore most people are not going to pull this aside and be like, "Cool, I'm going to use."
Yeah, I mean, like, what are you going to use this for in a MacBook Air or MacBook Pro? Actually, let me clarify here: a 13-inch MacBook Pro, not the big guy. We'll get to that in a little bit too. But I just don't understand. I guess how much more use it's really going to have of that. The only thing I know offhand that the neural engine cores are used for is apparently for the front-facing cameras on the laptops, or for the cameras on the laptops, the webcams. The webcams apparently use machine learning to improve the image quality.
To make you look nice.
Okay, yeah, to make you look better, whenever you're on screen. So
yeah.
Anyway, so they use a system called Secure Enclave, which is actually a module built into the SoC, which is for the real-time encryption between the SoC and the hard drive, which means that short of somebody literally taking probe taps to the back end of the processor while you're using it, there's no way in hell that somebody's pulling your encrypted data off of the hard drive.
That's dope.
Like, you don't have to think about, like, whenever you install Windows, you have the option of encrypting it, which just means that it's encrypted between the CPU and the hard drive. The difference is this has a dedicated chip on it to do that real time. Now, the benefit here is, like, for example, with live GPU loading, for example, with NVIDIA and, or was it Direct Storage API with AMD from Windows. The problem with that is that, and I don't quite know how this works, is that it complicates things whenever you add encryption into the mix with the storage. So this kind of solves a lot of that problem if you have an onboard chip on the processor next to the GPU, the CPU, and the neural cores to handle that encryption, decryption back and forth.
Yeah.
Probably the more interesting one of this is the Thunderbolt and USB 4 integration. As far as I know, currently there are no devices that use or have USB 4 integration.
What about USB-C, which is what is like the fucking standard for everything today?
It is USB-C.
Okay, thank God.
Yeah, USB-C is just the plug standard. Thunderbolt and USB 4 are sort of the protocols that communicate over top of those connections. So the difference is, I don't know if they're going to, like they did with USB 3, whether or not, like for the type A connectors, remember having the different colors based on the different types of connectors, whether it was light blue, dark blue, or red or black. I don't know if USB-C is going to have a different plug standard for USB 4 and Thunderbolt. I haven't looked enough into the spec for that yet. But it's kind of cool because USB 4 is supposed to be an open standard. Thunderbolt is Intel specific licensed technology. The difference is that it's now available as USB 4, for a lot more open communication, which is kind of cool. Tons of high throughput stuff. I think it's pushing I think USB 4 is supposed to be pushing 10 gigabit a second over USB. Jeez. So it's faster than most home network connections. So why not? So another thing announced anyway behind the M1 chip anyway, of course, was macOS Big Sur. The only thing I really have to say about this is that instant sleep wake apparently was available with this.
Pretty excited about this only because if it works the way my PS5 works, I'm all about it.
Okay, and I'm gonna have to throw the clip up here because the way that they announced this and showed the instant sleep wake was kind of cool because it broke out of Apple's normal, the way they present things and super clean and kind of poppy and kind of fun, that kind of thing, to shut all the lights off and get kind of quiet and sort of intimate with the computer and go, let's get intimate. Yeah, light. As soon as he opened it up, suddenly the login screen of the desktop was available.
Your Mac now instantly wakes from sleep, just like the iPhone and iPad. Let me show you, but first, let's set the mood. You touch and go, but don't you know? How cool is that?
Mark, I was really expecting you to do something when you went down here, and then your voice never changed. You're like, yeah, light. Oh, that was...
Oh, see, to me it changed, but obviously to you guys.
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
So macOS Big Sur, of course, the new version of the operating system. Apparently, they've been having some problems with that already. The recommendation is to hold off if your computer is used for anything of grave importance.
This is true for everything. Always hold off on the security updates. I know they try to alarm you and say you need to update now, or else you're no. Yeah. Take a moment.
If Windows is with Windows, if they're forcing you to do the security patch, that's when you do it. Because at that point, then it's probably already 2 months late, and then it's already been vetted.
Yep. 100%.
So, all right, so getting into the product launches anyway, there were 3 products that they announced: the MacBook Air, the Mac Mini, and the MacBook Pro. So the MacBook Air, typical MacBook Air, they actually talked about this one specifically having no fan, meaning it's completely silent. So the M1 chip with the 5 nanometer process apparently doesn't generate enough heat to need anything more than basic convection cooling. So, which is kind of cool.
I mean, SSD, the chip, and everything else, you don't need it.
Yep.
Makes sense.
So this is about both the MacBook Air and the MacBook Pro, and this is more of I'll just preface this as a rant. The ML enhanced face detection on webcams. Cool. Sounds like a good idea, right? Except Apple is still putting 720p webcams of shitty quality in their laptops.
Man, I want you to know that
you popping.
Broke that microphone.
Oh my god!
But I understand your frustration. Yes.
Like
it makes no sense if you're.
This is the third generation now that they've been thrown a 720p webcam into it.
Yeah.
But haven't taken the advice of literally every tech reviewer who's talked to them and said, please upgrade these to 1080p. There are so many other companies that do better webcams than you that most people need to buy a third party.
Yeah.
To really make it worth it. But this is also about the MacBook Air, and the MacBook Pro is a P3 wide color gamut display. Typical stuff for their Retina type, wide gamut OLED displays. The MacBook Air comes with Touch ID finally built into the power button so that you don't have to sign in using a password. And the MacBook Air is going to start at $999 with 8 gigabytes of RAM, upgradable to 16. The weird part is that the $999 version has 7 cores, not 8 cores. And I would have thought that was a typo if I hadn't seen it in 2 individual places on their page or on the product page. Okay. The upgraded version, I think at $12.99, $11.99
has 8 cores.
Has 8 cores, and
we
you
threw
can upgrade
an extra core just for you.
You can upgrade it to 16 gigs of RAM. The base model comes with the $999 version comes with 256 gigs of storage. The upgraded comes with 512, all of which are upgradable to 2 terabytes of storage. Which, by the way, again, you want more storage, you have to do it when you buy it. Otherwise, you don't get the chance later.
Cannot do it yourself.
Next up,
you know how to solder.
Next up is the Mac Mini. Same rough specs, 8 cores. It's 8 gigs, 16 gigs of RAM. Starts at 256 on the low end. Upgraded model comes with 512 up to 2 terabytes. Comes with an HDMI 2.0 plug on the back of it. Now remember, the Mac Mini, is the small little flat mini computer thing. That's right. You've got my Mac Mini over there still, don't you?
Yep.
Yes.
One of the more interesting things here is that it comes with an HDMI 2.0 port on the back of it, which is capable of 8K through it, which means that it does support the Apple 6K Pro XDR display. Kind of cool.
Mac Mini.
That right there is the Mac Mini.
Man.
Yeah.
If I were to get a Mac, that's
please no. But again, starts at $699. I think the upgraded model is $899 or $999.
Okay.
Then last, of course, is the MacBook Pro. Of course, the touted number again on this was 20 hours of video playback. The MacBook Air was 16 hours of video playback, which I found interesting that apparently video playback now, which I always thought was backwards, is actually less CPU and GPU intensive than web pages.
What?
Yeah, apparently rendering web pages is more intensive of a task from a battery perspective.
What are you hitting?
I don't think it's necessarily the task itself as it is probably how well it's optimized for it. And maybe that's why it takes more energy.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So here's the numbers. Actually, I'm sorry. I quoted that wrong for the MacBook Air before. Yeah, it's 15 hours of battery life while browsing the web or 18 hours while watching a video. How does that make sense?
What?
I'm just saying video encoding or video decoding is tremendously
I truly
expensive.
think they underestimate the amount of people who do nothing but just scroll Reddit.
Yeah,
it's a text page. There's not a whole lot of graphic intensity there.
To be fair, from a web developer's perspective, web pages have gotten a lot more intricate. They've gotten a lot more complex and do require a lot more processing than they used to. But rendering that, I wouldn't have thought would be the expensive bit there.
Well, what I'm thinking is when they talk about web browsing, they're talking about Twitter, they're talking about Facebook, which is fair. That's what a majority of
those are
consumers
very
heavy
web applications.
And those are heavy applications that not only have web processes but have video and all that built into it, right?
Yeah. And if you're talking about Facebook or something like that actually have video content embedded, yeah, all right, that's what you're talking about. But it's it gets kind of obscene. What is That's actually not as bad as I thought it would be. Never mind. I was trying to see what the actual network download size was going to be on Facebook, but it only came out to 3. Well, it came out to 3 megabytes to be clear. 3 megabytes.
Mark Zuckerberg, you're lying again.
Anywho, so the MacBook Pro, touts the 20 hours of video playback. Pretty decent sized battery, apparently. Still capable of being taken on an airplane. The difference is, of course, the processor is more efficient. Comes with a 3 mic array for recording, which I find interesting. So it's always been sort of a 2 mic array on the front facing towards you. I feel like the third mic is placed somewhere else on the chassis to, I guess, intelligently exclude ambient audio.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which has been the way that phones sort of operate for a while now. You know, most cell phones now come with 3 microphones on them, one up top, one somewhere on the side or something like that, and then one down the bottom to listen to you. And the idea is that the one up top or on the back side are used for, well, one, video recording if you're recording using the back camera to get better audio quality that way, but also to exclude any kind of ambient audio from your voice to make your voice seem more clear. So,
but they didn't want to put a better camera in. That's cute.
No, why would you do that?
Because why? Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, technically, if you're using FaceTime, I'm sure the quality is good enough there that you don't need to worry about that. But if you're using literally, Teams or Discord or I don't know, Slack, Skype, anything like that, I'm pretty sure your video quality is awful.
That's your fault.
Yeah, exactly. The MacBook Pros, of course, already come with their touch bars like they used to, which are the extra touch screen across the bottom. Kind of neat. A lot of people complain about them, particularly developers, because we use the F keys.
Yeah, I asked a few people who had it, and they're like, "It's okay."
They're super dumb.
Not every app has integrations with it.
I mean, I can see if you actually customize it. I can see it being beneficial to the individual, but that's truly on you.
They're super dumb.
So my rant here with this, and kind of my big hesitation, aside from the fact that this is first gen, it's M1 processor tech. Nobody really knows how well this is going to go. Plus, they're switching instruction sets from x86 to ARM, which is already a big jump in and of itself. Is there's only a 13-inch option. The 13.3-inch screen option is the only one available. The 16-inch MacBook Pro is not getting the upgrade.
Ha!
Now, my thought process here is that there's going to be probably an M2 chip or some other higher performance, like an N or a P or an O or something else that that they got available to be for higher performance desktop based applications. But right now, the only way that you can buy a 16-inch MacBook Pro is with the last generation Intel 9098 80H CPUs with Radeon GPUs integrated. Which actually, fun fact, apparently you can still buy the old Intel-based MacBook Pros and MacBook Airs for the time being.
There you go.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. I'm a little disappointed, I guess, with that they don't have a full-size MacBook Pro option, but maybe they didn't quite get another chip out and ready for full-size, iMac and MacBook Pro use cases.
That's also been my argument, right? Like, a MacBook Air is supposed to be the lightweight, easy to use, smaller variation for the casual consumer.
Yeah.
And the MacBook Pro is supposed to be for the developer or someone who utilizes their computer, their Mac, for work hardcore.
Right.
You're telling me that you only have 13-inch? Get out of here.
Yeah. So
that's not.
I'll take a 13-inch.
Obviously the silicone isn't quite to the point where they're really ready to put it in everything yet, and that's fine. Take your time.
Just go to California. There's lots of plastic surgeons. They can help you out. I wanted to make that joke since the beginning. I want you to.
I've been waiting for the proper time, too.
You've been holding on to that one for a while now.
He was like 13-inch, 16-inch. I'm like, give me an opening.
But the 13-inch MacBook Pro is going to start at $1299. Same setup as before. 8 gigs of RAM. 256 or 512. I forget.
256, and then you can add the extra storage as you.
Yeah, up to 2 terabytes. They're also doing education plans, by the way, for all 3 of these systems, where if you have an educational account or I'm assuming an email address, you can get $100 off.
Nice.
Kind of
back?
I mean, $100 is nice, but compared to Apple's prices, $100 is not doing a whole lot.
So I'm actually, honestly, for the laptop prices here, for the performance, I'm not terribly knocking it, because compared to what this cost.
That's fair. Well, and also
the laptop's actually not that bad, but that also does sound like Stockholm syndrome. So it's just
Well, no, I think you're right. I bought a MacBook Pro in 2011, $2,000, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
You also had the 15-inch screen.
I did have the 15.
Yeah, well, so like the MacBook Pro 16-inch, I expect to push the boundary at like $3,000 roughly. If you're fully specking it out, you're talking 32 gigs of RAM. You're talking 2 terabytes, if not 4 terabytes of storage. You're talking a massive GPU and CPU increase. Like that I would kind of get, but I don't think $12.99 starting out for what is supposed to be the quote unquote Pro model, which is the entry, of course, of the Pro model. I don't think that's terrible.
I would say mine in 2011 was like $1,400.
Yeah. So. That's not terrible, like the MacBook Air that I have whenever we got it was I think 2 years old by that point, and I think I got it for 700, 800. Yeah. Now, granted, it only came with 4 gigs of RAM and a 512 storage drive, but it was so bad. But
it's like being a caveman. What's wrong with you? So I mean,
can't hold all that porn on that.
Some of these sound impressive. I think ultimately I agree with your initial assessment, which is, hey, there's a reason why we didn't have a special episode. Like, this is all cool. It's not groundbreaking.
Yeah. So the benchmarks are finally coming out for this, and I started watching some updates on this today because a lot of channels like The Verge and Marquez Brownlee started releasing their review videos on it, or initial review videos on it. The Cinebench scores came back finally for this, and the upgrade or the MacBook Air outperforms the current generation 16-inch spec'd out MacBook Pro.
Oh wow!
Whoa!
Okay.
That's the MacBook Air. No fan.
Yeah.
Probably downplayed clock speed because because Apple never talks about clock speeds. But probably a downgraded clock speed compared to the 13-inch MacBook Pro. But then the 13-inch MacBook Pro blew it out of the water a little bit farther. So, performance by comparison. If you're in, like the way that it was phrased several times over is, if you're in the market for buying a Mac now, like let's say your old one's finally dying, or you need a new laptop for school or something like that, get an M1 chip. Yeah, get an M1 chip. But if you have a last generation MacBook Pro 16-inch, whatever runs great, don't bother. It's really not worth going with Big Sur right out of the box and going with a sort of beta tested M1 chip at this point. You're better off probably waiting to see what else Apple has in store probably the beginning of next year.
Yeah.
Now, there have been no rumors as far as what the next generation is going to look like or when that's going to happen. We'll just have to sit back and wait.
Yeah, of course. Any final thoughts before we move on?
Nah, that was pretty much it. Wait,
that was a good
don't get it yet.
I like it.
I think it's hilarious how much of a fanboy he is now of Apple after all that shit talking he did last year.
Look at him. He's just wearing that iPhone.
Oh, no.
All the time.
No.
He's growing facial hair
AMD.
now.
I am definitely a much bigger
hipster.
fanboy of AMD lately. AMD's cards are apparently supposed to drop tomorrow.
Yeah, I was pretty impressed by their specs.
And I'm going to be waiting for some of the spec or some of the actual benchmark tests to come out, because all the reviewers have their units now. They're just waiting for the benchmark embargo to lift tomorrow. So
Mark's like a windsock, just waiting for the wind to change. Ooh, AMD. Ooh, Apple. Ooh, IBM. Ooh.
Just wait for me to finally say that I've switched back to an Android phone.
There you go. Can't wait for it. Please let us know in the comments.
It's in your mouth.
Floating directly in front of Mark's happy hour shirt when you think he's going to swap over to Android. You can
gotta represent.
It's time to move on to the next topic. Handsome John, talk to us about why it's good to play video games.
I am super enthralled with this because when I was a psychology major over in college,
he was a psychology.
What?
I was saying validation for the amount of hours you play. Go ahead.
What? Okay.
Is your headset off?
He's going deaf.
You're cutting in and out really bad. That was really weird.
Super, really professional podcast we have right now. Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me?
Can you hear me now?
But Oxford University is doing a study that suggests that playing games can be good for your mental health. Which, when I was in school, I wanted to do something like this, and my teacher told me, no, it's not important. We needed to do something that's more relevant. And I'm like,
bad John.
I could have been at the pinnacle of this, and you fucked me. But
literally, is that how you passed?
What?
Literally, is that how you passed?
Yes.
Yeah.
It wasn't my proudest moment, but I passed. The UK university used gameplay data from Animal Crossing's New Horizon and Plants vs. Zombies Battle for Neighborville in the study, using psychological questionnaires to find that more of the playtime led to a greater sense of well-being in players. Which, I mean, it's like playing a game that would be the equivalent to like Happy Pills.
I mean,
like taking a Xanax.
I was gonna say you're playing happy games. You're playing casual relaxer games.
Well, to be fair, when you start off in science, you start off little. You have to start off with a little bit. You get your variables, and then you can start doing bigger projects. But you have to start somewhere. Now the problem is
years before we get Call of Duty back.
Or Last of Us Part 2. Let them play that and see how happy they are.
Honestly, they're going to be doing
Demon Souls,
the extraneous parts first. They're going to be doing the really, really like easy stuff that's heartfelt, and they'll probably do horror genre next.
I would fucking love someone to dive into Soulsborne games and just be like, how does this make players feel?
Like I'm gonna die, frustrated and angry.
Be Scotch and Dots, we need you.
COD's going to only consist of a demographic of 8 to 13-year-old boys, all screaming at high pitch to their television.
Well, in a lot of studies, in order to make them cost effective, when we were doing it, the way you would do it was you would say, okay, tell me you have a job to do, volunteer. You have to record how much time you played this game and then come back and report to me, and then we'll ask you some questions. But the problem is like, in that lag time, them trying to give you a questionnaire that they filled out, did they actually fill it out on time? Did they actually play the amount of time? What they're doing here is real-time playtime data gathering, which is huge because we don't have any. Everybody is, not everybody, I'm sorry. You'll have pundits going out saying that, video games are addictive, or, violent video games make people do violent things. And we have zero research on how this actually affects people. And to see that the NHS and the World Health Organization is getting together and actually putting money towards this is huge.
Okay, boomer.
Look here. I ain't no boomer. Okay.
I'm talking about you. I'm talking in general, like the pundits themselves going, video games are the reason these shootings are happening. Okay, boomer.
100%. Well, it's funny. It's like I said it to Brett earlier, and they're like, what Fox News was telling everybody that video games were going to do to my generation, and what Fox News is doing to our parents.
Yeah.
It has like us with like a cute puppy looking at them, and then you have the parents one being like a werewolf ready to attack you.
Yeah.
But
oh my gosh.
But the stuff that what's interesting is that in the study they found that you were a much happier human being in general just for playing 4 hours a day of Animal Crossing.
A lot of hours.
That's a lot of Animal Crossing.
Well, 4 hours a day for a short period. It's really not. I mean, you think how long you do a sit down. Like end of the day, 8-9 o'clock, and you play until about 12. That's 3 hours solid of playing, right? And it doesn't have to be consecutive either.
You and I are passionate about video games, so when you say that they're doing a study of people and trying to get them to play video games, I think 4 hours is a lot of time for someone to put aside.
I mean, that's true.
It doesn't play video games.
But you also had to have a certain amount of time that would have been indicative of an effect on you. So a third of your day would have a large effect on you if you were doing something that you hated or something that was that was out of the normal. Because you're going to have a control group variable. We would be one of them. Hey, you play a lot of games. Play this game for 4 hours a day. Did it make you feel any different? And you see how that control variable group matches against someone who doesn't usually play video games or someone who moderately plays video games. So there's probably a whole lot of different variations that you could do with this study. And you always look for the extraneous variables to either isolate, remove, or expand on. And
so how long is it going to be before I can have a psychologist write me a note that says that I have to play 4 hours of video games every day?
We're working on it.
Honestly, I think that might be a thing in the future. But at the same time, it's going to be, hey, you have to play 4 hours a day of Teletubbies. And it's going to be like, you know what? I'm feeling a ton better. Look at me. Pinnacle health.
I mean, if a psychologist would recommend that you play a Teletubbies game, off the rip, you're probably going to be like, what the... Really? A Teletubbies game? Come on. And then you're an hour into it and you're like, oh my gosh, this is great. I'm having a great time.
Yeah. All of a sudden you're like, I got to platinum this Teletubbies game. I just got to get the platinum.
I mean, unless you're the kind of person with anger management problems, then it just gets worse.
Yeah, there you go.
But they also did say that they don't give carte blanche to video games. Like, we haven't studied this thoroughly. Like, this is a part of a study. This is a study, but it's good that we're going forward with this, because it much like guns and studies done with those, like by the health organization, has been like a giant kind of like gray area / no, because do we want to know that these in-game purchases are actually making kids an addictive personality and may one day make them, in debt from gambling? No, I don't think these game developers want to know what they're doing, per se, even though they know. They have the metadata.
I'll say it depends on what level you're at. The actual developers themselves, they probably don't want to be doing that kind of stuff. The businessmen that sit above them and tell them that they have to, on the other hand, yes.
Yeah, 100%.
They make a lot of money doing so. They don't care.
Well, and you have people saying like, this has a possible effect. And it's like, there's no evidence of that, though. Let's find that evidence. And I am totally 100% okay with this. Let's find out. I want to know that, microtransactions have a negative effect on children and do or do not have an effect on adults after the age of 13. Cool. These kids don't play these games with microtransactions. It's that easy. And then, it's information is power. And the more studies we do, the better off we're going to be.
Well, I agree with that entirely, but I also want to like counterpoint in a very odd manner. Did anybody believe this would not be the case? At least from the three of us, right? Like,
well, sometimes the obvious isn't necessarily as obvious as you think it is, because you find that a variable changed will entirely change everything. That's what I'm saying. You look for the extraneous variables, because those are the things that are going to tip something one way or another. And you also have tests, especially in psychology, to look for efficacy values of, does this question make sense? You have your chi-squared, you've got your Bauman-Spearman, you've got all these tests that you would go through that looked for, well, this doesn't really help you. This is a solid question based on this data. Like, it makes sense. And then you go forward with those things.
Maybe I'm just like, I totally understand what you're saying. I agree with you. This is fantastic from the scientific spectrum of like, hey, we are like methodically mapping this out and measuring it. That's fantastic. But I truly don't think that there's anything to talk about here. And granted, I play video games a lot. I know that, but like games in general, like take the video out of it and just put a game, tabletop, card, whatever you want, like is proven to make people happier because you are engaged in something. Like, it's pretty fucking obvious that this, of course, is going to make you happier. It gives you a goal. It requires you to use your brain. It allows you to flex yourself in a way that you don't typically do. Like, anyone who's sitting here going, oh, I'm surprised, I think is not looking at the human condition in general, because again, the video spectrum is literally just a platform. Right?
Yeah.
Like, John, you and I have played Uno together on our PlayStation 4s afar. Uno is a tabletop game. That didn't change the game, really. If anything, it augmented it, made it a more fun experience and a very different experience.
It made it a different experience for sure, especially when it would freeze randomly or kick you off. And it's like, well, thank God.
It just gives it character, man. Come on.
But I want to propose something to you, Brent, such as the extraneous variable. We're all playing Catan. Everyone's drunk. Except for you. Not so fun for you anymore.
It depends on how everyone's acting while they're drunk.
Again, like, the environment matters in where you're playing your video games. Is it a stressful environment? Does that matter? Let's find out. Like,
but that's not what they're testing here.
No, I know. What I'm saying is I'm just giving you an example of what an extraneous variable could do to augment the outcome of a study. So you're looking for these things so they do not change what you're looking for. So what I'm worried about, and this is the dark side of, doing studies in psychology or sociology or whatever, is you can find something and someone says, hey, look, violent video games do relay into violent behavior. And it's like, okay, what were your variables? Oh, we found a bunch of ex-cons and we had to play this game, and it turns out they went and stabbed people afterwards. And it's like, okay. That's
like, this is actually a real world scenario. The variables of their lives are all independent, which is kind of nice to have. At least if you have enough of a data set to work with outside of that, and then you keep the constant variable of the game that they're playing and how much they're playing it, then that makes things a little bit better.
Yeah,
you know,
well,
or it gives you a better understanding.
The
I
problem
guess,
is
of that.
news agencies tend to take the highlights of a study and say, "Oh, look, violent video games do make people more violent," and then in the study it says by 0.1%.
Yeah, I think my favorite explanative video clip from that is if you ever watch College Humor's "If Google Was a Guy."
Yeah.
Where, you know, like the woman comes in and asks, you know, to see if that there's a, you know, or I guess studies that, you know, vaccines are linked to autism. And he goes, I have several thousand that said that it doesn't. And I have one that says that it does. And she grabs it and says, I knew it, and walks away. Like that, you know, and unfortunately in the age of the internet, like,
and that's why things
that
have to be retestable, and that's why you have to be extremely transparent about what you did, how you did it, like, well, and we have to make sure that they're recreatable. Like, I just don't want, you know, the headlines to determine what these studies are going to be bringing about.
And I think one thing we've learned is that people are going to say what they're going to say regardless of what the studies actually say.
Yeah,
so
that's what I was going to say, is like, you don't get to decide that, nor do the studies. Like, the headlines will be what they are regardless. The whole point of the experiment is that they deliver the information.
Well, Trump has pointed that out. Yeah,
I was going to say, we've seen particular political heads, you know, use that as a scapegoat several times because it's easy to throw it out there because, okay, boomer.
Well, again, if we get intelligent people into places where they do important things, we won't have this problem. So, again, it's just one of those things.
Haven't you learned yet? That's not how that works. Intelligence and power do not correlate at all.
Not often. But, you know, it's a step in the right direction. I just hope that they travel it carefully and with regard to what this is, because if they make a wrong move and it ends up, you know, riding the wave even in a wrong direction, it could completely destroy a genre of video games because they're going to become outlawed for no good reason.
I literally don't think that any study right now could be any worse than anything we have out there. Like, again, if it goes in a different direction and it causes a headline, okay. Like, we've had 100 headlines about how video games have caused violence.
Yeah, and we've also had mass shootings with guns, and we've had very little gun reform. I mean, I'm not saying that it's not a possibility, but at the same time, when you have a politician who wants points, they're going to do stupid shit like that.
There's 1,000 studies out there that show quote unquote that video games cause violence. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, they just won't pick this study.
There's thousands of studies.
I'm being exaggerative.
Okay. I was about to say, I was like,
because there's plenty of studies out there that prove, quote unquote, that video games cause violence.
Well, they were all done by biased entities, and then
you're right.
I've seen some of these, and I'm like, this makes zero sense.
The politician doesn't care about the study being correct; they just want their narrative.
Yeah.
So while this is great, it's good to see a study done well.
And right,
not,
like they're willing to
doing this.
They're willing to. They're willing to throw credibility to the wind on the hedging on the bet that you're not actually going to do the research.
Correct.
To look
I actually
yourself.
think it's funny that you think that it won't have an effect.
Oh, I mean, I don't. I've seen it. Like, we literally have lived through times in which people are like, "Hey, here's a new study that video games cause violence," and everyone's like, "Okay, whatever." That's fine. Like, the ESRB exists, everything else exists. People are happy with that status quo.
Unfortunately, parents and adults are always going to think what they're going to think, regardless of what may actually be the case.
Adults.
Dude, we need to send you a video after this. Great.
There's something I've learned as, you know, I've become an adult, is that there is no such thing as adults.
Yeah, there's not enough of them in the world. That's what it comes down to.
Yep.
No, I am in no way trying to discredit this study. That's not my goal here.
I feel like you're just slapping in the face going, you're worthless, you don't do anything, and we're going to do what we want, so That's pretty much what you said.
No, what I was trying to say is I think this is a very interesting study because in my head specifically, I look at games and go, yeah, duh. Like, again, it doesn't matter the medium. If you play a game, you will be a happier person, almost guaranteed. Like, even if a game frustrates you, it still challenges you in a way that you were not challenged previously. It requires you to use your own intellect or knowledge or skill or talent in a way that you don't do on an average basis. Like, games are fun. There's a reason why carnivals are full of games. There's a reason why we play board games and card games together. Like, games have been around for centuries.
There are parts of this that are common sense, but you also have to understand that a third of the United States is still illiterate and without internet. Or with below a third grader's comprehensive.
But you don't need to be above a third grade comprehensive to understand how a game works or play and enjoy a game.
Didn't say you did.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you're going to understand something that people are telling you or are talking to you about, and they're like, read this, and they're like, I can't. It's a problem. But the interesting part of this study is that, it's a small step. It's not going to be revolutionary. These first few studies that they're going to be doing are not going to be revolutionary, but we have trusted sources that are non-biased doing things. That's important because anybody who's going to take anything seriously would be from those sources before they would be from biased sources. And we need another voice. I really think that that's important in this. And I think down the road where you have people who are always looking for scapegoats, I think that it would be honestly, the industry's best interest to want to support these.
See, I think that's where my own cynicism lies in the fact that regardless of whether or not the industry supports this or people who want to support video games support this, they're just going to find that other study, regardless of how valid it is or not. And our president has proved that over the course of the past 4 years. It just doesn't really matter. This is still great. And don't get me wrong. I'm very happy to hear that Oxford, of all the universities out there,
I think it's funny. He's like, it's really great. It's useless, but it's really great. I just love this dichotomy we're having in the same sentence.
It truly lies in the
I don't think
middle
you've made up your mind yet.
Because it is useful in the sense of validation. You and I sitting here along with Mark going, hey, my time is worth it. See, but when you're trying to convince people that this means games are worth it, they don't give a shit. They don't care.
But us understanding that we can use that as a proper source of validation doesn't mean anything when the influential types don't use it as their own point of resource, basically. To actually give a statement that matters. Instead, they would rather twist what needs to be done for propaganda's sake to some extent.
Well, the problem is that
or because it makes a better story.
Yeah, like that bottle.
And waste not.
It's worth every penny. Worth every penny.
It's going to be interesting when they do, and I think they will find a correlation between a certain age group and an increase in, either aggressive tendencies or violence of some kind with violent video games, because again, the Bonobo study where they showed a kid hugging or an adult hugging the clown or whatever, and the child emulated that, and then you had someone take a hammer to it, and then the kid went to town and just beat the crap out of that doll. So it's I think after obviously after self-actualization and probably some social integration, there would be a different response, but that is important. And that's another reason why these studies being thorough in how they're doing is so important. And always we're going to have a lot of tomfoolery going on, be like, oh, nope, you will be a serial killer if you play this game.
One can only hope not. Any final thoughts before we move on?
Brent has a giant red thing in his mouth.
It's called my microphone.
The microphone has a laser sight on it.
It has a dot,
Oh wow, that is just gross.
Please let us know what you think about this study proving that your time is valuable. Play as many video games as you want in the comment section. Floating.
That's not what it said.
Show your mom the article next time she says no. That game says M for mature.
Correct. There you go. There you go.
That's not what it said.
That's what it says.
Not what it said at all.
Time to move on to our final topic of the show. 52 minutes into it. Hopefully this will be as long as possible. John and I have officially in our households PS5s. So what I would like to do is have a discussion about the PlayStation 5 since we have had less than a week with it. It's Tuesday. The console launched on Thursday. And Mark is going to be somewhat of an interviewer in discussing with us as we go into it. So we have a small outline. Mark may or may not have comments.
Oh, God, he put out a book.
So what
this is just a FedEx envelope. Don't worry about this.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, you just want to do this on another cast? I'm okay with that.
So I think the first thing we're gonna do is go talk initial thoughts, and I will be right back because I'm gonna unplug my PS5 to show you how fucking big the thing is.
Well, I mean, I guess like the first bit really is like, what do you think of it, John? What's your first what's your real first impression, I guess, of
It's
like
heavy.
how's it been playing?
When I took it out of that box, I was like, oh man, don't drop this because this is gonna make a loud bang. Yeah. And we're not small people, by the way.
Does it really in person look like a PS4? You know, with like a white folder around it? Kind of does.
No. It
Not
is
at all.
much larger than a PS4. As a matter of fact, this PS5 here, half the height of my stand-up speaker that are downstairs for our surround sound.
Ooh.
This thing is fucking massive.
Yeah. It's a heavy.
Look at it.
I mean, even the controller is like, it feels like it's denser.
Yes.
For sure. It doesn't feel like there's as much air space inside of the controller. Obviously it is heavier because it has got longer legs, and I think it's got heavier components in it for doing what it does.
Controller compared to my head.
Yeah.
So
right?
my
Like, look at this thing, man. Like, it's my face.
I do want to get a good feel for the DualSense because I think some of the features they're talking about they have implemented are pretty cool. So.
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
It actually makes the console, in my opinion.
I agree entirely. So, DualSense.
Brent's a little too into it.
Is the number one reason to buy a PS5. Like, if you don't care about this controller or feeling the difference, it doesn't matter. The graphics are great. Graphics are always going to get better. You'll get there eventually. Most of the launch titles are on PS4. This is the reason to upgrade. And yeah, put your Xbox controller down. And the number one game to play, honestly, and John can vibe with me here, is the pack-in title Astro's Playroom. So Astro's Playroom is made by Team Asobi. It's the same people who made Astrobot Adventure, which is a VR game. It is a 4-hour, roughly, game.
Yeah.
3D platformer. You move around 4 different levels and you gather collectibles that are Sony's history. So it's like PlayStation 1, 2, 3, 4. You get a bunch of other things they've had in those generations, like the PSP, the Vita.
Mm-hmm. There was stuff I'd never seen before. I was like,
correct. The GPS attachment for the PSP.
What? The microphones. I never saw those before. I was like, okay.
All kinds of stuff. But the major difference is because of the haptic feedback and the way they built the game, the way you feel the game is night and day.
Yeah.
Like when you're walking, one of the levels involves Astro going into the beach area. So you end up like going down a slide and you land in the water. And in the water, you can feel small, subtle vibrations in the controller. When you hit sand, it's this sluggish vibration as you're moving. And then, of course, there's a microphone here. So you're hearing the as you walk through sand, but you're feeling. That's what I meant. Yeah. There's also a microphone.
There's also a microphone.
Yeah. There is a microphone here, but also a speaker. You're feeling the subtleness and the kind of delay reaction you would feel as if you were trudging through sand. And the second you go from sand to hardwood, it is like night and day. It instantly flips up. Like, it's so hard to describe because I feel like a crazy person trying to tell you. But legitimately, you can feel it in the controller, the difference of walking on sand to hardwood to ice. Like, it is astounding.
When it comes to immersion, it's a 100% win.
Yeah.
Oh, what a difference, or what a distance we've come from the DualShock when, you know, it went from one vibration motor to 2 in the PlayStation 2, you know.
Yes,
it's just...
For people who are not aware, the typical rumble in a controller, and this is for a majority of controllers out there, arguably minus this one right now, is that there are 2 motors in the ends right here, and all they do is spin. So
spin weights, Yeah,
you get a slight spin, you get a medium spin, and you get a heavy spin. Like, that's all you get. And so this has motors all around it that have a vibration function to them, and you can feel it. You can absolutely feel it. It is astounding.
My favorite part was playing Astro was the bow. And it just got me so excited for the future Horizon Zero Dawn.
That's the other thing. Adaptive triggers. So these triggers have resistance assigned to them. So right now, I can tap with them as much as I want. But even playing Spider-Man Miles Morales, 75% of the way through, nothing. 25% for the rest, you have to press. You have to put effort into it in order to get the full swing. And that's true for exactly what John's talking about with the bow on Astro. You have to pull, and you can feel the resistance in it. And not just the bow. There's a sequence where you have to play as Astro in a rocket ship.
Yeah.
And you have 2 engines, and you can feel the tension in order to fire off the engines.
Nothing was better than the gotcha game. Nothing was better than the gotcha game.
Oh, yeah.
So not only are you pulling the lever, as you're pulling it down, you get a slight pull, then it clinks down as if like it released. And then you get the ball in your hand. And then you sit there, and as you're just slightly going, you feel it crunch. And then it just lets go as it explodes.
So good.
And the sound effects coming from the controller are perfectly tuned to what's going on to a point where you're just like, I just did that. I swear I just did that.
I think John, you said it right. Immersion.
Yeah.
Immersion is what this is in a way that we haven't dealt before. So video games are a visual medium, they're a sound medium, and a physical medium. And visuals have upgraded countlessly. This generation, we're having even better visuals. I'm gonna put this I need to like tilt this closer to me. People can truly understand the size of this thing because it's
so a good massive chunk of metal, man, and it's heavy too. Getting it out of the box, I do not recommend trying to pull up. Lay it down and then slide it out.
Yeah,
slide it a little closer in frame there, like over in front of your shoulder there or something. Yeah,
it's so massive. This is my head. It's so massive. But we have not felt immersion, literally felt immersion in a way that this controller can give. And they've only given us a taste.
Yeah.
This
is
sounds hyperbole,
tip of the iceberg, baby.
Like hyperbole, but like this is truly just the beginning. It is astounding what the capabilities are.
I mean, whether you're playing COD and pulling the pin off a grenade, you're gonna feel this. Lock a gun if it locks up. If you miss the reload, like you would in a Gears of War game where you try to perfect reload, and if you mess up, it locks up. You can't pull it down; it just will not give. And even if you force it down, it still won't fire. But at the same time, like it's saying no, you're jammed. It would be just like, oh my god, that moment.
The developer side of me thinks that this is really cool because. So the way that they're doing this actually isn't motors. It's they're called voice coil actuators. Basically, they work like speakers that just operate at so low of a frequency, moving a tiny little piece of metal around. The difference is that there are so many of them around the controller that it gives such an easy way to do that. Now the trigger anyway is just a really heavy controllable electromagnet behind it that just gives that heavy tension or that hard stop, to prevent you from going too far with it. But it's just a really cool tech, I think, and I almost want somebody to finally build PC drivers for it, and start implementing that in games, because I mean, PS5 or PS4 controllers have been used on PC for a long time now,
100%,
and are kind of the standard for esports. If you're using a controller like Rocket League, for example, most players use PlayStation controllers for that. So I think if DualSense has, adaptations for PC to be able to utilize those same kind of implementations, I think that'll make gaming next level on multiple places. So,
I mean, honestly, if you could put this on a PC, I don't see a reason why you'd have to buy a PS5.
Well,
especially if they're bringing games over to PC like they have been.
Exactly, right? Like they already started with Horizon. I imagine they're going to move other things over as well, and I imagine this functionality will move with those games.
Probably.
But they're going to try and sell their console first.
100%. Yeah. I mean, and that makes perfect sense. Like, don't release drivers, short of the community releasing something, which is going to take a while. It's going to be like 6 to 12 months before somebody from the community is able to drop drivers like that. And I'm guaranteed that Sony can drop some like that. They may already have them made and are just holding on to them. But I think the controller is definitely, just from my own observance of the marketing of what you guys are talking about here, is that the controller is definitely one of the biggest experiential additional factors here that just change the entire landscape here. Not even so much the console itself, is definitely that the feel of the game, which is the only thing at this point that can get better. We've hit a law of diminishing returns with graphical and audio and audible fidelity. So tactile feel is the next bit.
Yeah.
Well, especially when you think about how most people play games, they like, especially when we're talking about a console, it's in front of your TV, it's like connect to a sound bar or sound system or just your television, and you're in front of it. So while they tout the ray tracing for 3D audio on this machine, which is highly capable of doing it, you don't get that unless you're really using a headset.
Headphones, headset, 5.1, 7.1 surround sound system. Even a sound bar that can simulate 5.1 will get you much farther than just basic television speakers, whatever. But definitely.
This is the innovation, and Sony needs to double down. I will say the biggest disappointment I've had, and we have like a small list here, but like the biggest disappointment has been most of the games are available for both PS5 and PS4, and it shows on how they're using this. So like I just beat Miles Morales literally before this podcast. Does not use the controller in any instrument that I
really
not really
in the way that I would.
I mean, they're like the phone would ring and you could feel the vibration, and
there's a couple of small
just to clarify,
would do
Miles Morales was a launch title, right?
It is, but it's also on PS4, and so I think that's the key there.
Well, yeah, but I would have assumed, I guess, launch titles would have had full implementation of what you can get out of the PS5 to some extent.
You would think so, and I think they ran into a crunch factor, and that's also what I'm worried about with Horizon Zero Dawn. Talking about it's supposed to be, was it considered to be PS4 as well?
I think they said it was on PS4 as well. Now, Jim Ryan, the head of Sony, has said explicitly that every title coming out on PS5 is built for PS5 and they backwards compat it to PS4.
See, so I didn't feel that way with Miles Morales, though.
I agree with that entirely. I think like, Miles, I think Sackboy's Big Adventure, I think these launch titles will be the exception. That's the hope.
Did it have at least some integration of the haptic feedback?
I mean, because speakers, it utilized the speaker for things.
But I mean, didn't the PS4 controllers have some speaker implementation?
Yeah, they have a speaker as well.
Yeah.
Well, so the thing is, again, that's building for the PS4 that just happens to work for the PS5 too.
Correct. Yeah, that's exactly what it feels like. Now, I've heard people talk about how they feel it's different. I disagree with them. I don't think there's a whole lot here if you're going for Miles Morales. I would like to try Sackboy's Big Adventure because that's another one that's cross-generation between the two. Yeah. And then our own B-Scotch and Dots will be playing Demon Souls, and I want to talk to him thoroughly about it because Demon Souls Bluepoint said they built each weapon to feel differently on the controller.
Interesting. Okay, so no, they actually built the haptic feedback system in.
Which Demon Souls
because
yes, I was about to say Demon Souls is exclusive to PS5. So
well, because I mean, was it some of the other Soulborne games are some of the other ones like are on PC correctly? Correct?
Yeah. So all the Dark Souls, I mean, 1 through 3.
Like, graphical fidelity probably isn't that big of a deal for them to upgrade to prep for the new hardware. That's probably the easiest part of that. They may have to up-res and then add some detail to some textures here and there, maybe add a few more polys, or not have to refine the polys down so much or compress them so much for the PS4. They can actually upscale them a little bit more for the PS5. Most of the time, whenever you develop up and scale down for your support for hardware. But
I will say I don't want to like diminish what Bluepoint did because
no,
Demon's Souls is a PS3 game, so they definitely built the assets brand new for PS5.
Because the ceiling's a lot higher for them. So
correct, yeah, but you're correct in the sense that like they had a game format. They added some newer graphical fidelity to it.
But I think spending the time on haptics is the right place to go for that.
Correct.
Like especially for something that is supposed to be sort of or can be so much of a feel game of it's sword and physical weapon fighting. Like you can feel that. Like I cannot imagine what God of War.
Oh my God,
is gonna feel like on that.
If you're telling me my shield's in the left side of my controller, like the L2, and I pull down L2 and I only feel that in L2, like this section of the controller, that would be incredible. Like
your left hand actually feels like it's got something heavy, or it kicks back at you. That, like, for example, if you get hit, like that kind of thing.
Exactly. So, I think, John, you and I can both speak to just the experience we've had because it's Tuesday now. PS4 5s came out on Thursday.
Mhm.
I have 2 in this household. One was delayed until Friday, so it's been a little bit all over the place. But aside from Astro, what have you played?
I was gonna play Dead Cells until I got a hold of Astro, and then that took my
Yeah.
time the past 2 days.
Yeah.
I
get
played
that
Miles
platy plat, baby.
Morales, and I fumbled mainly with just looking into playing with the settings and looking at things and going through stuff. Unfortunately, I've had a lot of home responsibilities I was neglecting, so I didn't plan for, so I had to do. But I mean, I did Platinum Astros, and I'm about halfway through Miles Morales right now. That's all I've gotten to. But I did look at my game library to kind of see what was PS4 compatible and what's not, and I was actually pretty impressed with how many PS4 games were not compatible. There was I think saw maybe 1 or 2 off the bat, so not too bad. But I'm not entirely sure if that was even full on list.
So I played Astro and Platinum it. I've beaten Miles Morales tonight. I've played 3 other PS4 games. I played the port of Final Fantasy 9. I played actually the PS5 version of Maneater, which looks way better than the PS4 version. Way better. Controls the same. Again, not really utilizing this.
Did you buy it physical?
We need to.
No.
Oh.
Brent, you and I need to get together and compare it against PC.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. I love that idea.
Yeah, I do too, actually.
And then I also played a little bit of Dead Cells. So I've been dabbling a little bit. And Miles has been a lot of fun, but feels like a last gen game that just looks nicer. Astro is the game so far that feels like this is next gen, and mostly it's because of how it uses the controller, man.
And not only that, but anybody we talk to is like, this is my game of the year, or this totally made buying the PS5 worth it and has made my experience completely amazing.
You can ask John. I have been annoying
pimping it out.
I am so annoying to people because they're like, hey, I just got my PS5. I'm like, you know what you should do? You should spend 20 minutes on Astro. I know you got that really cool game. You should put the disc in or whatever and let it download, but you need to play Astro's Playroom. If you don't play Astro's Playroom, I'll murder you and your family.
Yeah, wow, but the thing is, no one regrets it. They all keep playing
exactly.
We had someone playing Godfall. It was glitchy. He's like, screw it. I started Astros and I haven't stopped. And I was like,
yeah.
The way they did the museum on that was just freaking brilliant.
It is a competent 3D platformer on top of the fact that it's a tech showcase for this controller, on top of that being a history museum to PlayStation.
Yeah.
And it's free. And it's already installed on your PS5.
It wasn't installed. I had to download it.
Really?
Yeah.
You are the only person I've heard that have to do that.
I had to search for it, download it, and then play it.
That sucks. Yeah, everyone else I know, the 2 PS5s we have here, Steve, Sean, everyone already had it installed. That's the point, is that it should be installed on your machine. Because how it went in this household was, hey, we have Valhalla, Assassin's Creed, right? It has to download. That might take a minute. Let's hop into Playroom. Let's see what that's about.
It didn't take that long, did it?
No, it didn't. It took 10 minutes to download 40 gigs. I was so amazed. Oh my god, a comparable wireless card on a console. Thank you.
It's weird. It's like you actually support wireless AC or Wi-Fi 6 now.
Who'd have thought?
Weird.
Who'd
actually,
have thought?
I want to know if they support Wi-Fi 6 or not.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
It is?
I remember that being said.
I'm sure. Well, I can tell you right now, for one, they support 5G networks, so that helps.
Yeah,
that's the 5 gigahertz.
That's the first big line. There is, oh yeah, we're on wireless N. Okay, so how about 5 gigahertz? Nah. You don't want gigabit over Wi-Fi anyway. Come on now.
That was the traditional fucking PS4, which drove me nuts.
Yo, but, PS4 Pro had it though.
Yeah, I know. All that being said, though, I did have one crash on the system already.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So that actually kind of led into what a question I was going to have. You guys have talked so highly of it at this point. Have there been any major or even minor detractors so far, like other than game implementation, because that's a developer thing. But
we don't know if it's a developer thing or I honestly can't tell.
Well, I mean, if it's not functioning on the controller, it's more than likely that the developers just haven't implemented either proper use of the haptic feedback system or
it's not a controller thing.
Haven't implemented it at all. But like I guess my thing is that have there been any issues that you've come across with the PlayStation 5 so far? It's again a brand new product. It's brand new software that's on it. So of course a crash, or here or there might be expected for the first couple of months at least, because you literally got some of the first units, that shipped out.
People test this all at once, and there's going to be
more or less,
right?
But I guess that have you guys run into anything that obviously nothing that's game breaking for you guys, but have you guys run into anything that's mild or majorly annoying?
So I got one that's pretty annoying because one of the perks of getting a PS5 is that Sony has announced that if you're a part of PlayStation Plus, you get the PlayStation Plus collection. 18 games you get to add to your library as part of it. Not part of the monthly games or whatever, you can add them however you want. If you add more than 3 of them to your library, the PlayStation 5 starts freaking out and inevitably crashes. This happened on both Brianna's PlayStation 5 and my own PlayStation 5 in this house.
Really?
Yeah. I imagine there's going to be a fix for it. My personal solution, which I recommend to everyone, is every time I turn the PlayStation on, I go and add 2 of them to my library, and then I go play a game. It's unfortunate that that's the fix for now, but it is what it is. I believe it's possibly related to the download queue issue that other people have seen, but I honestly don't know.
Interesting. Okay.
I had a game crash to the point where the PS5 wouldn't turn back on for a while.
How long is a while?
It wouldn't turn back on until I pulled the power out and plugged it back in.
That's kind of a big problem.
Yeah, that's a little
I mean, don't get me wrong. That's something that's fixable with software.
Yeah.
But I think both the game dev and Sony should probably get on top of that, like now.
I definitely. Well, I was afraid. I was like, man, that's got to get reported. They're like, oh, we had this happen. Do you want to report it? I'm like, yes, I do.
Yeah, yes, I do.
I mean, I do remember like whenever the second to last generation of the 360 came out, or revamp of the 360 came out, the weird like glossy black spaceship looking thing came out. Because that was the last. That was the last console that I've owned. I do remember like a lot of people talking about problems because I ran into my own issues too, whenever that came out. And I remember looking on Reddit specifically to try to find, okay, who else is having this problem here? Because it can't just be me. There's no way. So
yeah.
I imagine you guys are in that same phase at this
Venom
point.
Punch, and it was like right about to hit the dude, and it was like, boop. I was like, uh-oh.
I think hopefully it's not as annoying as like a PC blue screen where it gets to that point and whatever is in the audio buffer at that point, whenever the computer just blue screens or whatever, just repeats over and over again. Like it could be like a quarter-second audio clip of somebody screaming and you just hear like just constantly in your ear, and it's annoying as hell.
No, it wasn't that, at least on my end.
No, it wasn't that either. It just churned out. Everything went black. The console still had a blue light on it, and I was like, I don't want to do this, but you're not responding to anything.
So I'm going to shut you down.
You're going down. I also had a regular game crash. And then in game, I don't know why, I got a new suit. I put it on, and now it won't let me take it off.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is dumb.
I relate that to a game bug than the
PS5
it is.
Itself. That one is.
Yeah, that's definitely a game bug. As far as crashes are concerned, that could be either. So it's going to be left up to the game dev to figure it out first. Yeah, it's going to be left up to game dev to figure it out first, but then they're going to have to work with Sony to try to figure out what happened too, because again, it's a brand new operating system update and brand new hardware and new drivers and all that stuff. So
I was super worried it just bricked itself. I was like, you got me.
I mean, I get it. That would be terrifying as hell.
I mean, all of this being said, right? Like all these minor, I call them minor problems. Game crashing the console is not necessarily minor, but your console's up and running. Like I still think this console is nice. Like the speed alone is probably the biggest win. Like I've touted the DualSense. This is definitely the future, but how fast you can get in and out of things is amazing. So Xbox has a Smart Resume, which allows you to just resume between two separate games back and forth, which is really nice. PlayStation does not have this. However, with the PlayStation cards, which are the little activities that appear per game, you can kind of utilize Smart Resume in a way that you wouldn't necessarily get legally, quote unquote. And it's incredible. Like earlier today, I was playing Miles Morales, put it down, went and got my chili and got everything ready for dinner, cleaned the kitchen, came back up and was like, oh, I was in the middle of that mission. I shut the thing down. I could save, go to the main menu, like open it up, all that, or I can access this card and boom, brings me right to where I was in the menu.
Yeah.
Like, and not just that, the speed of trophies, the speed of the game, the speed of the store, like everything is like that. And it is fucking amazing. Like in every way I could have imagined amazing. Even games that are older that are PS4, right? Like they still load fast. They look just slightly better. Like it is to me as an enthusiast well worth the upgrade today.
Yeah.
It's worth the upgrade in the fact that like we enjoy playing games as they are, however they are. But in the sense of whether you need to get one today, if you have a PS4 Pro, I say hell no. I don't know.
No.
Honestly, you do not need to do this. All these games outside of Demon Souls are available on PS4, and you're not going to have to deal with the bugs. And unless you were just itching to play Valhalla on PS5, sure.
That's my number one question is like, if someone were to ask me, and I've talked to my boss about this a lot, is like, do I need a PS5 today? No, you don't. Now, this is cool.
Oh,
the hope is this goes everywhere else. Like you want to check this out if you're into games and you play them emphatically like we do. But ultimately, Miles Morales is on PS4. You know, Valhalla, like you said, John, is on PS4. Like the last gen PC, whatever. Like it's everywhere. So it's also not utilizing this the way we want to. So the incentive truly isn't there except for the fast speeds. If you want the fast speeds and you're down with spending $500, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
Like, you know, in this household we have two.
This is it's like we said though. This is the tip of the iceberg. It's coming in the next year. You are going to have amazing games at your fingertips to play with this DualSense, and I believe that developers who want an edge and want to make a name for themselves will do really cool stuff with these controllers.
Well, and based on the article we talked about, you know, or that Brent, you had mentioned, you know, initially before we had started the important was, you know, that it was going to take 3 years for the transition to happen. So at the end of that 3 years, every game should be on board with this platform by that point.
Correct.
Which means that this is going to age like fine wine at this point. So
yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah,
absolutely. But is it worth it? If you have extra $500, you like gaming that much? Sure. If not, you can wait. You will be just fine waiting as much as
even if you like games that much, you can still wait. You're fine.
Yeah.
So
we're
here's the last question I think I have, I guess, in this respect. And since the PlayStation 3, this is like the question I have to ask because I asked this for the PS4 too, before with somebody else's. How's the thermals?
Oh,
does it get hot? Does the fan kick up?
No. So number one reason why this machine has this design and is this big is because a majority of it is
a heat sink
fan. It's a giant fan that literally does nothing but displace heat. So this thing is cool as a cucumber.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Because every now and then I hear the startup of the fan, but then it goes away.
No, I was gonna say because John is the disk drive.
Because I remember the PS3 specifically being a meme of, you know, place an aluminum plate on top of it and start cooking chicken while you know, enjoy some Gran Turismo.
Listen, you little shits. You may think that's funny, but the PS3 is literally used as part of the cheapest smart computer you can buy. The U.S. Army utilizes 23 of them combined to make a smart computer. So shut the fuck up. No,
oh my God.
Damn.
So angry.
That's so aggressive.
Listen, I defend the PS3 for days because their cell structure this is incredible, despite the fact that it was incredibly hard to code for.
But I do remember the PS4s, even like from the esports perspective, whenever we would do events and whatnot. Well, you could hear fan noises kick up around the room, very heavy. Like as soon as a tournament would start in one place, suddenly 10 PS4s are all cranked way up, to 100% of the fan. So
here, just a fan. A giant fan. No,
yeah.
Sony
which gave some skepticism, I guess, with the design that Sony had. Although we could see what the ventilation holes look like around that white trimming.
Yeah.
Microsoft gave zero doubt that there was going to be well ventilated airflow through theirs anyway, based on the trash can style design. But
what trash cans are normally circular. Okay, this is a square.
Whatever. It's still
it's a trash can design.
It's a trash can design. No, but I guess that was a big question that sort of loomed, because I know from a production perspective anyway, or from an esports perspective, like setting up 35, 40 of them in a room or whatever will matter a lot from a heat perspective and from a noise perspective.
Yeah, you're not going to have that problem.
Yeah, Sony specifically said that the reason why they went with the design, specifically with the cooling, is because you can't hear it. So John and I both have disc versions. What we hear is the disc drive spinning.
That makes sense.
As far as I understand it, we should never hear the fan. And so the only way to test that, John, would be to take a disc out and game. Try that way.
Yeah.
I will probably do that with Valhalla. My wife bought it on PS5. We're going to put it on this bad boy. I love that my arm is all the way up here because that's literally the top of the PS5. But yeah, I mean, do you have any final questions for us before we wrap this bad boy up?
Actually, I guess one other question would be: have you either of you plugged it into a 4K television yet, or are you guys both running on 1080p?
It's on the way. Don't you worry. We'll come back to you on
house, so.
November 26th, and I'll get back to you on that.
There you go. There you go. He can let us know.
Yep.
We don't have a 4K in this house, fortunately. We probably won't upgrade.
We were talking in the pre-show about you possibly, looking at 4K, big old television, big old 4K.
Eventually.
I tried
to move my living room around first.
Yeah, that's gonna be a project. Yeah. It would have been here already if Best Buy would have had freaking stock in it. I would have been able to tell you that because I was really curious myself, and I was like, whatever, I'll just buy it.
I might just take it over to Kane's. He's got a QLED. I'll just put it up in his machine.
That's what I originally wanted, was a QLED, and I was like,
yeah.
Well, I got a question for you, Marcus. Do you want one now?
I'd rather take the haptic. I feel like I'd go with the haptic controller or the DualSense before I'd go with the console itself.
Well, yeah, of course. It's a full package right now, asshole.
Wow, that's so aggressive.
Can't pick and choose. I want my cake and eat it too.
But please let us know what your thoughts are on the PS5. If you have one of your own, we would love to hear your input. Are we over-exaggerating? Do you think we're correct? Do you think we're underselling the console? Let us know.
I think we're PlayStation fat boys.
Floating directly in front of my forehead, right here, like a tramp stamp. But now I think it's time for last call. Last call! You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Of course you can join our Discord, because we are not the only people on this show and our Discord that have PlayStation 5. There's a number of people who are all trying out new games, including B-Scotch and Dots, just picked up his today. We are trying to play a number of games. There's Demon's Souls. There's, oh my God, my brain stopped immediately after that. Call of Duty we're trying out here. There are a number of games everyone's checking out, as well as just wanting to chat, hang out, and enjoy life. So please join us in the Discord for all of your concerns, comments, and whatnot. For the weekly deals, we have a Humble Sweet Farm Fall Bundle. This actually came in today, which I thought was hilarious because it timed really well with the podcast. But the Sweet Farm Fall Bundle comes with Super Hot, which I don't know how that fits in the bundle. Come on.
Super Hot.
Come on, Humble. Makes no sense. Along with, as it loads very, very slowly, Moonlighter, which I've always wanted to try, A Hat in Time, which is supposed to be really good, and Coffee Talk, which is supposed to be a nice, relaxing game to talk to people. So check it out. For a total of $12, you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10 games. If you were to, I'm sorry, 9 games. I can't count. If you were to purchase this for $12, for $1, you get Over There Omega Edition and Toe Jam and Earl Back in the Groove. For the minimum price of $7.55, you get Super Hot, Moonlighter, and Chutchell. And then, of course, for the 12, you get the rest. So check that out. This, of course, goes in support of Sweet Farm. Sweet Farm is a first nonprofit sanctuary in a world to address impacts of factory farming for animals. Once again, if you are not down with this, you can select your own charity and support them however you want with this bundle. So don't let the charity stop you from getting these games for a cheap price. For our weekly reading, it's actually a really cool article that appeared in Game Informer on how Yakuza Like a Dragon humanizes homelessness. If you're not aware, Yakuza Like a Dragon is the newest game in the franchise that is actually more JRPG than like action brawler. And one of the classes is a homeless person. But it's not just a class, it's a character. You get to know and love and learn about them as well as how they became homeless. It's very important to understand and empathize with people who are suffering. So I think this is a wonderful article to discuss that. Because video games, I don't think know how to approach this really well. Honestly, media in general doesn't know how to approach this really well. So what a great way to look at it. Finally, for some cool ass shit, we have Japan is getting a live action stealth game based on Final Fantasy VII Remake. You nerds don't care, but I do. This is amazing. Can't wait to try it out. It's based on the Shinra building. It looks like you can also create your own Ubisoft wrap up with the Ubisoft Connect. So all you have to do is sign in with your account on Ubisoft Connect, and they'll give you a nice little video. This is actually really cool because it's a video that breaks down your top 3 games you've ever played on Ubisoft in the past 5 years. They have to be games that have released in the past 5 years on Ubisoft, but well worth looking into. John and I have our own. We would be on the Discord. Hit us up.
It's impressive.
Also, there's a wonderful glitch in Miles Morales that turns the hero into a brick.
That is hilarious.
Hilarious. Absolutely.
Oh my gosh.
And finally, 90 minutes into our show, the question of the week is, what is the number one feature you'd like to see incorporated or improved upon in gaming? So we're talking about this next gen. This is the push. This is what we've discussed on what we like. But what is something that you would like to see moved forward upon, right? Like, is it truly just as simple as graphics, audio? Are you looking at VR? Is the haptic feedback the way to go?
So I guess my thing is that from a graphics and audio perspective, I feel like I said, I feel like we're hitting the law of diminishing returns at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Games look great as they are. And are only continuing to look better with better lighting and whatnot. And I think we're kind of hitting this really cool part this really cool thing from a tech perspective where lighting looks wonderful. It looks more realistic. But I don't think it looks so realistic that it detaches you from the idea that it is a game. So I feel like we're kind of in a good point with that, and it can get better. But I don't necessarily want games to look like they're actually real life to some extent yet.
Yeah, there's also
because it detracts from the idea of it being a game. But we were talking about the DualSense, and that made me think about some of the advances that have happened. I guess as far as haptic feedback, whenever you're playing a game. And my thing is that I feel like VR has been sort of the lacking space to some extent whenever it comes to that haptic feedback or that feel, whenever you're doing something, to the point that there are, like VR cafes or VR, I don't even know what you'd call them, like amusement parks almost, like where you're dropped into a scenario where you can physically interact with real objects in 3D using an AR tech, to sort of get that same haptic idea. You can physically open doors and it looks like you're opening the door in the game because you physically are opening a door, in real life. And I think getting to a point where haptic feedback sort of fits into the realm of like Ready Player One kind of territory. Yeah, I feel like that's when we've hit sort of a level of realism that maybe from a graphical perspective doesn't quite get there, but the idea is that the haptics are so good that it can immerse you a little bit more while still giving you the same feeling that, yeah, this is still a game, but I can interact with it like I live in that game to some extent, which is kind of the point too,
No, I agree. I think that's a really good point. And I'm at a similar point where I'm not necessarily on the level of your edition. I truly would be like completely okay if we can get this working the way I want it to.
Yeah.
Where it is just integrated in every game and you can feel it from the controller's perspective.
Yeah.
Because I cannot cannot overstate how much I enjoyed that feeling in such a small, tiny game, which I know was created with love. I am not trying to diminish like the value of Astro, but like I want a 40-hour experience that feels like I think of Death Stranding, which is 100 hours to platinum, which I played, and how, you know, Kojima talks a lot about how he wants the people to feel the struggle and how these adaptive triggers could play into that.
You would be
and how
freaking tired. You're going to have carpal tunnel before you finish that game.
I want to feel a little bit of that feeling they're trying to convey into me from their character. I think that is fascinating. I would love to see that.
Okay.
I want to see them take haptic feedback to the extreme. I want to wear a vest when I play Call of Duty. Then when I get shot, I actually feel like I get shot. And if I get a stim, I actually want something to stab me that feels like a stim shot and like a shot of like cocaine. It just gets me amped up.
We could work that out.
I think
that's doable. There are plenty of videos on the internet about how that works, and with some of the board programming that I've done in like the past couple months, we could work something out.
Be like, because I've seen that they've made vests before that actually like they're intense. Like it will actually make your muscles like not want to.
No. Vest. Come on. Like the vest would only be like if you're getting shocked by something. Let's be real here. No. You want the feeling of getting shot by something. Then what we'll do is we'll get some high power paintless paintball guns surrounding you, and whatever angle you get shot from, that's the gun that shoots you.
Paintless, not in the face. Paintless so paintball. Be able to control this,
or we could do beanbag guns. You know, like I'm sure that'd feel just as hard.
God. Have you ever been shot by anything like that? It looks painful. I have not either, and it doesn't look that fun.
Paintless paintball, yes. I have a permanent knot on my my right femur from it. So there's that. But no, like we could work something out there, bud.
Yeah. It just would be. It actually would be kind of cool to play a game where like you're wearing a headset VR and you've got a chest on and you're getting shot at, and so you're taking damage, and wherever the bullets are hitting the character, you've got strong, extreme vibrations going up that side. That would just like, you want to talk about immersion, that would be it. Be
pretty intense. Please let us know what you think you would like for video games to progress to. What is the next big feature that you're super excited about? Let us know in the comments flowing directly above my Tiki mug, which you can't get a hold of. Moving. Until next time.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Man, a 95-minute video. I didn't think it was possible.